The second and final hour of African Diaries with me, Kitty Phetla, standing in for Tish Mataz. Exactly 14 minutes after 11 o'clock. And welcome to the Soul Stage. And taking the stage this evening is Rentia Retief. And man, she's really, really special. She is a fine artist that has graduated from the University of Stellenbosch with a BA in Fine Arts in 2014 and an honors in illustration in 2016, and now works as a fine art professional and illustrator. Her paintings are drawn from places she has visited and environments where she knows very, very well. The terrain itself is not the subject. Instead, Retief explores what she calls quiet spaces where the emotional and physical landscapes meet. Working in such a manner is really, really incredible. And her approach is rooted in saudade, the Portuguese idea of longing for something you never actually had. Good evening, Arantxa. How are you?
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Ah, fantastic that now you're with us. And thank you so much for making the time to chat to us. This is really, really incredible. How are you feeling about your upcoming exhibition?
I'm really happy with it. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think it all came really well together, and I'm excited for people to go and see it in Cape Town.
And speaking of which, I mean, it's titled Northbound, and Northbound traces a journey from the Overberg to Tunisia. What did that physical move from Africa's southmost point to its northernmost tip reveal about your sense of belonging?
I grew up close to the most southern tip of Africa, and I went to in the Overberg, and I was given an opportunity to run track and field athletics in the north of Africa. I'm a amputee, so I went for para athletics, and I thought, well, while there, let's see what happens. And I applied for an artist residency, and so I kind of went there without thinking about why. And then in the process of the journey, I realized there's actually something significant about it because I hailed from the southern tip, and here I am finding myself in the northern tip of Africa, and yeah, it was sort of a by chance happening, and it yeah. Without planning, I got to experience what does it mean going from the south to the north, and all these
Yes.
interests came up from it. Yeah.
You describe your approach as saudade, a melancholic longing for something lost or perhaps never had. How does that
Mm.
feeling guide the way you paint a landscape?
So I often try to steer away from the idea that within a landscape that you claim the space. I think there's a long history of landscape painting where you almost plant a flag and you claim a place of significance. But for me, it's a lot more about the feeling of a space, the emotional gravitas that a space holds, and the reminder that I'm really just a visitor and I'm a moving body through the space, and that I'm not claiming it. I'm part of it, and I'm here for a time. So it's a reminder of something that I never really like own it, if I can put it that way. And then that longing is like something you never really had it, but you feel like there's um, something we can all relate to when you look at let's say, a seascape or some landscape,
Mm.
and you don't know where it is, but there's something about it feels familiar. And I think that was important for me going from the southern tip to the northern tip. I've never been to the northern tip. I don't know much about it.
Yeah.
I just went there by chance, and then but something felt familiar about it, and I was wondering, is it because it's still within Africa? There's a lot of conversations about that sense of belonging that I found within Africa. It's like complete opposites from the south to the north, but at the same time, I found so many similarities between the south of Africa and the north of Africa, which I really appreciated.
That is so, so incredible. We're going to take a quick short break. And then when we come back, I'd love you to, share more about the title Northbound references both ancient human migration and your own heritage. And, I'd like to ask you more about that, but we're going to unpack that a bit more right after when we come back from a quick break. If you just joined us, it's exactly 20 minutes after 11 o'clock, and we're having a Rentia Retief on our soul stage. And she is a professional fine artist and an illustrator, of course. And I think her work is really incredible. And there's such a meditative approach in her landscapes, in her work. And that's why we had to have a conversation with her today. And we had to unpack what Northbound is all about, that she's going to be showcasing in Cape Town. Now, the title Northbound references both ancient human migrations and your own heritage. How did exploring that contrast shape the paintings and the exhibition?
So yeah, I always knew that my heritage were from the south of France. My brother did a ancestry test a couple of years ago, and
Oh,
then
wow, those are cool.
yeah, he also then found out we also had North African heritage, which I didn't even know about. And in the process, when I found myself in Tunisia, I also wondered how would I fit in there? Like how does that yeah, where do I belong? And also, yeah, coming from, I always thought I'm only from here European descent, and I'm sort of a odd one out in Africa. But then I realized, oh, I actually do belong. Even though I grew up in South Africa, there's always that question of sense of belonging. So that was one part, and also just realizing that we respond to our environments as people in different ways. So for me, it was something to do with the landscape and colors, especially in South
Mm,
Africa. Have a different color palette within nature, and as an artist, I respond to that. And then, while visiting the north of Africa, I realized that the culture itself responds to a certain color palette that's within nature. So the Mediterranean had a different kind of blue that we don't necessarily have in Cape Town, and the culture actually responded to that. And a whole layer of colors and a visual culture is kind of reflected within nature. So I try to go kind of back to the source, to nature, and just respond to it from my own perspective. So that's kind of what the exhibition is about as well. My response to flipping my view from the south of Africa to the north of Africa.
It's so funny. Actually took the time to immerse myself into your landscapes. And, you speak about a color palette. And the moment you said blue, I literally just saw your work. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, it's very interesting that your color palette as well is very consistent. But then at the same time, there's such a beautiful difference with the little nuances that you put into the landscape. So your work is it's extraordinary. And I love the simplicity behind it, but there's so much depth as well. And, this brings me to my next question. From Rooiberg's stoop was painted while chasing the last of the light. Can you take us through that moment and why it stayed with you?
So a few of the paintings were painted in South Africa, and that one specifically was in the Northern Cape.
Mm,
And but yeah, I also tried to include places that were something to do with North in South Africa. So going to the northern little bits in South Africa, and also the Northern Cape. But that one specifically, I painted on a strip while the sun was setting, and I was kind of set by time. So the sky was changing quickly. I was running out of sunlight, and I had to really paint quickly to
mm,
capture this. And I realized that parts of being a landscape painter is you work with time because you
yeah.
work with light. So work with how landscapes change. So if you look at a landscape painting that was painted, let's say 300 years ago, certain elements, usually man-made elements, would change, but
Yes.
the consistency about nature itself. So the mountain would stay the same, and the hills and everything around that is constant. But I realized that something fleeting about the sky as well. The sky and the light is as fleeting. So that was something I tried to focus on a lot, was quickly capturing the light. Yeah.
And speaking of skies, for an untrained eye, you wouldn't be able to, one, I speak for myself, wouldn't be able to pick that up in terms of the terminology if you wanted to speak about it, but then you'd be able to pick it up in somewhat that there's a difference between the now and the then, and in terms of what would be more man-made that would make the change to the landscape. The
Mm.
exhibition moves between Tunisian port towns, Northern Cape, and Limpopo skies. Which landscape surprised you the most while you were painting it?
I really enjoyed painting one on a little road trip that we did in Tunisia. I think the title is Into the Unknown.
Mm,
We we sat on a rooftop, and we heard the call to prayer because it's an Islamic country. We heard the call to prayer at night, and it was just completely dark and beautiful. And we actually saw the moon rising as well. And that moment of stillness with the sound of the culture was just beautiful, beautiful. And I tried to capture that, and it was kind of an abstract painting at the it ended up being. I tried to capture the feeling of sitting on the rooftop, and I didn't really know what will happen because I painted the night, and it's always like going into the unknown. What's going to happen if I paint the night sky? So
Yes.
that thing that surprised me, I think, because I didn't have an expectation for it. I just wanted to capture a personal feeling, and yeah, that was really fun to work on.
Now, here's a technique that I find so fascinating. Yes, I see. It's very interesting. You work on both sides of the canvas, so so memory and the subconscious inform the front. Can you explain how the reverse of the canvas guides what appears on the surface?
So I didn't do it with this specific exhibition, but
Ah,
it's a
okay.
technique. Yeah, I often use a technique where I would work on unprimed canvas. So it's basically just fabric that I would take. And then I work with oil paint. So the oil seeps through the fabric. And then I would try to paint a landscape or something from heart or from a visual reference. But then what happens is the oil paint would seep through and you almost get a ghost image at the back. And then most often, I kind of enjoy the ghost image at the back a little bit more than the
Mm, mm,
because it
mm.
has the infinite chance to it. And it also kind of takes your control a little bit away as an artist. So then I would reverse it and then work a little bit within that surprise landscape that happened. So I enjoy doing that because I feel like it taps almost into the subconscious. It unravels a subconscious landscape and not necessarily a physical one. And I think that's
Mm.
quite important in the whole sort of feeling of just it goes with a feeling of trying to capture something that you can't quite ever get, and that's really what I'm trying to strive to do is capture a feeling of the place and not the specific place.
I think that's really incredible. It's almost like a continuous conversation that seeps
Yes.
through the canvas itself. It's like the painting has a two-way conversation, but then has one vision. That's how it makes sense to me when I hear you talk about it, and also when I envision it at the same time. Now, going back to Northbound, Northbound is about place, memory, and the emotional life of the natural world. What kind of memory were you trying to hold onto this body of work?
There was something about the culture in Tunisia that I really enjoyed, where people live quite close to each other, and
Mm,
we don't. I don't feel like in South Africa we drive a lot around.
yes.
We're kind of dispersed. We don't have walkable cities, and I stayed in the heart of Tunis in a Medina. I just walked everywhere, and not cars can't even go there. And I really enjoyed that sort of layeredness of the city and of the landscape in general. So I tried to capture that a little bit. And also, it is quite a layered culture in itself. A little bit like Cape Town as well, even though it was in the north and we're from the south, I felt there were some similarities to all the different cultures that came to superimpose itself, and every one of that brought a little bit of something. But I specifically like the walking because I feel like when you
Yeah.
move in a space, you experience it a little bit more at heart than just driving past. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like it was more of an intimate setup, versus Joburg, which is like, South Africa's busy, 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 busy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, I'm talking about like the cities, like for instance, Cape Town, Joburg, Durban. So I hear what you're saying. There's a lot of driving around. So it was really beautiful for you to capture that. You hope visitors take away a sense of wonder and peace. What moment in the exhibition do you wish people would pause at the longest?
Sure. There's a seascape that I really enjoyed making because I feel like the sea's almost no man's land to a certain extent, and it just captures like a breath almost.
Mm,
Yeah, the sea could be anywhere. If you look at a seascape, you don't know if it's in North of Africa or South of
yeah.
Africa. It just is. Yeah, so I really kind of like that one. Yeah. So yeah, I hope you get that quietness of it.
Yes, I mean, the sea also brings a sense of serenity and peace, right?
Mm,
So,
completely.
yeah, that's where I'd want to pause because when I see water or streams, the sound of it alone, I think the sound
Mm.
would come out so beautifully, come across so beautifully just looking at one of your pieces. Um, as a Cape Town based artist, how has living and working in the South Africa shaped your understanding of light compared to what you found in Tunisia?
So one thing that I never realized is I'm a big hiker, so I am
Okay.
often in the and that's also how I get inspiration for my work in general. And one thing I never realized is the sun. If you're in the southern hemisphere, it kind of comes from the north, so everything facing north is full of sun. Where in the northern hemisphere, it's the other way around. So if you face south, you get more sunlight. And I was constantly lost walking around in the city in Tunis. So that was a little bit disorientating. So I've realized I'm actually connected to the sun coming from the north,
Mm,
topsy turvy. So having needing to walk around in Tunis day to day while I was at an art residency meant that I needed to kind of navigate myself. And
right.
usually I do that intuitively, coming from Cape Town, being a hiker. So that was also something I realized with Northbound. The title itself was kind of referring to the sun as well. Yeah.
I always find it fascinating as a fine artist. How do you remember what to capture and put onto canvas? Because I mean, the example that you make now, with hiking and having to remember the different landscapes. Do you take pictures, or you have an extremely incredible photographic memory that you'll be able to put on canvas and it comes out the way you saw it?
No, I wish I had a photographic memory. No, I do take photographs, and some of the pieces of this specific show, I did paint on strips and on rooftops and so on while I was in Tunis. But most of the time, they're based on photographs, but I don't stick with it photographic, like completely religiously. I do venture off from it. So I kind of start with a photo and then see where my heart wants to take it. So I feel as a
Yes.
painter, you have that freedom to kind of play and layer.
Mm.
Um, yeah.
Now, this exhibition follows your residency at Dar Meso International in Tunisia. What part of that residency experience is still living in your practice today?
So I loved staying there. It was a very creative space. It wasn't just visual artists that stayed there. We were,
Mm,
I think, about 5 or 6 creatives staying at the residency. Some of them were musicians, some of them were writers, and that way of surrounding yourself with not just visual artists but creatives in from all fields, that really inspired me. So I've been enjoying going to the theatre a little bit more lately. So that I think that's my takeaway, was to get more into the theatre. Funny enough, yeah,
mm,
I realized that creativity in my case is obviously a visual part, but that's not just how I get my inspiration. For instance, the one artwork was from the Call of Prayer. That was a sound inspiration. So I felt like I should actually fill my creative bowl with all my senses. Yeah,
right.
so that's the way.
And just to wrap it up, in terms of having a relationship with your work, all works in Northbound are available for sale. What do you hope the new owner feels when they live with one of these quiet spaces each day when it comes to your work?
I I hope it brings a bit of wonder to them, because the paintings weren't made to be a photograph of traveling. It was something to do with capturing a feeling. So I hope it kind of makes them think and wonder, and I hope it brings lots of layered emotions and calm ones for that matter. Yeah.
Man, Rensha, thank you so, so much. You speak like your artwork, honestly, very calming, soothing, and just really healing. So thank you so much for making the time to chat to us here on Channel Africa.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank
Thanks so
you.
much.
That was Rentia Retief with a BA in Fine Art in 2024 and an honors in illustration in 2016, and now works as a fine arts professional and illustrator. Her paintings are drawn from places she has visited and environments she knows very well. The terrain itself is not the subject. Instead, Retief explores what she calls quiet spaces where the emotional and physical landscape meet. She is just really, really incredible, and she's showcasing in Cape Town and her show exhibition titled Northbound. So go out there. It's at the Sisonke Gallery. Go out there in your masses and go and enjoy yourself and just really be at peace as you look at her landscape. I've managed to take a look at some of her work. It's really, really breathtaking. So go out there and go check it out. It's exactly 11:35 right here on African Diaries with me, Kitty Phetla.